We are ready.
Okay, are we ready? And
Yes.
everybody's muted? Okay, I'm going to start over and welcome everyone. Good evening, everybody. I'd like to welcome you to the very first virtual town hall meeting for Julie Fitzgerald, candidate for mayor, city of Wilsonville. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Aaron Woods, and I'll be your host and moderator this evening. I and my wife, Shirley, we've lived in Wilsonville for over 24 years. I've been active in city affairs as well, serving 2 terms on the Development Review Board B, and I'm currently on the Planning Commission. I thought I'd mention that for those of you who are wondering, who is this guy that's the moderator? I've never seen him before. At any rate, we would have really preferred to have had this town hall in person, as I think all of you would agree. But in light of the COVID epidemic, this Zoom venue is the safest way for Julie to engage with you. Before we get started though, I think everyone knows that this town hall will be recorded, and it will. This will allow Julie and her team to be able to listen to all the questions and comments that were made once we get to that, and potentially post her questions and answers for those who cannot attend tonight. So I'd also like to ask everyone, if you haven't already, and it looks like everyone is muted, so that's good. This will ensure that we don't have any background noises, that could be disruptive for the town hall. One thing I want to say here, I believe that all of us that are attending this town hall tonight have something in common. That is, we live in Wilsonville, number one, but also we care about its future. That's evident by your being on this call and listening to what Julie will be sharing with you tonight. So on that note, let's get started by welcoming Julie. Hi, Julie. How you doing this evening?
Fine, thanks. Thank you very much, Aaron, for hosting this call. I really appreciate it. And before I get started, I did notice that we have Representative Courtney Neron on the call, and I wanted to welcome you to the call, Representative Neron.
Thanks.
And thank you. We also have Councilor Charlotte Lehan from the Wilsonville City Council. Welcome. And are there any other elected officials I haven't noted yet? Well, thank you for being here. I'll give it back to you for Aaron.
Okay, thank you, Julie. Julie, I know you've been quite busy these previous weeks with your campaign, and it's great that you're having this town hall meeting tonight, because this will allow you to really share your vision for the future of Wilsonville. Before we get started with the questions though, I think it'd be good for you to share with everyone who does not know you, and for those of us who do, as a refresher for those of us, just a little bit about you.
Well, thank you. I will share a little bit about that. And we were just talking a few minutes ago about what I was doing this afternoon in this beautiful weather, which actually was pretty warm. I was up at the Oregon Zoo, where I work as the executive director of the Oregon Zoo Foundation. And we were having a hard hat tour of the construction project that was primarily funded by the voter approved bond back in 2008. And that did bring, and is continuing to bring, some very good construction jobs to the zoo. And it reminded me of also a lot of the projects we have in Wilsonville that today are helping with jobs as well. And we also had some donors who had supported those habitats. So it was really exciting to see what was going on there. But in my career, I have really worked in that fundraising field in what often is called public-private partnerships. And I've worked in a lot of education areas, the Oregon 4-H Foundation. I started the development program for the Children's Museum after it was spun off from the city of Portland. That was a long time ago. And I also worked for one of our favorite institutions that many of us have something to do with, and that is OHSU and Dornbecker Foundations. For almost a decade, I worked there doing fundraising for the School of Medicine in Dornbecker and really enjoyed that. And then just prior to coming to the Zoo Foundation for several years, I was with the Oregon chapter of the Nature Conservancy. And my husband and I have lived in Villebois here since 2007, and we, between us, have 5 grown children and 2 grandchildren. So that's probably, and also I was a member of the Wilsonville City Council from, started just at the end of 2012. I was elected to the term that started in 2013, but because that seat had been open, the charter said that I had to fill that. So that gave me a little extra month or so, and then served for the full 4-year term. That's probably a good enough little synopsis for a sunny day.
All right. Well, thank you for that, Julie. You have quite an extensive background. So I'm going to start out with this first question. Why did you decide to run for mayor of Wilsonville?
That's a good question. You know, I just really, I probably share this sentiment with a lot of you. I really love Wilsonville. We moved here because we noticed it was something really special. We noticed the streets looked great. The streets looked clean. That got our attention. Wonderful library. My husband is a retired librarian now. And all of the beautiful parks and trails. And we met a number of people from here. And so that was the beginning. And then when I served on the city council, I learned so much more about how our city works and the incredible level of citizen involvement that we have on our boards and commissions, like some of you on this call have already served on. And at this point in time, we are all aware of the incredible challenges we're facing as a community, a state, and a world financially or comprehensively with the COVID pandemic. That's one of the factors, but overall, I just really want to be a part of doing everything I can as mayor to help keep this city a wonderful place to call home. There's a lot wrapped up in that, but that's what I want to do. And, you know, we hear that phrase, Wilsonville, let's keep Wilsonville a wonderful place to live, work, and play. And I think there's a lot wrapped up in that statement. And I think it also asks a lot of questions. And how would we do that? And I think it's going to take a lot of determined effort and a lot more citizen involvement going into the future.
Great. Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more in your comments there concerning the city. So let's talk a little bit here on what do you feel are the important skills that a good mayor should possess?
Thank you. Well, one of the most important things that a mayor does and that is make sure that we are using the financial resources that we have as a city in the most effective way to serve the citizens, our voters and our ratepayers. And not only our financial resources, but the assets that we have, our sewer system, incredible water system, and the entire infrastructure of the city. Some of the things that we maybe take for granted are working so well because we've paid attention to them. And I don't know, you know, if everybody has noticed, but if you Google look on the city website and go under the search button when you have a little free time and look up AAA rating, and you'll see an article about how this city has such a strong financial footing today that it was awarded a very high financial rating. And so that is a responsibility for a mayor to work to maintain that and work to be able to be ready for opportunities that come up and be ready for challenges. And a mayor cannot do that alone. When I was on the city council, I think you've all probably observed this, but there's rarely something that one person does by themselves. So you really have to be able to work as a team. Each member of the council is going to meet people and hear different things along the way. And I think we also have to reach out and take some overt steps to involve more people And so that's one of the things I want to do, is have some additional steps on top of what the city's already done. They've done quite a good job of trying to involve people with all the citizen boards and commissions, the newsletter that they have, the website, public notices for meetings. But really, we found that more, I think, is needed to be done, probably person to person, neighborhood by neighborhood, to involve some people who maybe just haven't tried it yet. And that way we'll get a broader representation.
Okay. Yeah, we're going to, I think we're going to dive into that a little bit deeper here as we go on into the evening. But, you know, I want to stay a little bit on your background, because you got an extensive background here. So how do you believe that your professional experience has prepared you to take on the job of mayor?
Well, in my field of development and nonprofit leadership, you meet so many different people. You meet the experts in the field. So for example, with the working with Oregon Health and Science University, as a fundraiser, the leader of the effort to get funding for important projects, research, and new buildings, you have to meet the people and listen to them, who are responsible for planning and going ahead with the project, and the experts in the field. And you also have to find people who are interested in that and want to help move it forward. There are also oftentimes challenges in doing strategic planning and moving forward with different viewpoints. And so what I found in my field is we have the best success when we can find out from people what they're trying to accomplish, come together in a unified group and decide what is the best way to get to the goal with buy-in. And that changes over time as you involve more participants, but I've had a lot of opportunity to do that kind of thing. And I did have experience, of course, on the city council for 4 years, which I think also prepares me for this position.
Okay. You know,
Julie, I'm sorry to interrupt. Before we go any further, I think we have some folks waiting in the lobby to join.
Okay.
We could invite them. Thank you.
Great.
okay. So thank you for that summary there. One of the things I know, you're working at with OHSU Foundation and National Conservancy. You undoubtedly were involved in, I'm assuming, raising a lot of money, maybe to the tune of millions. Am I kind of embellishing on that, or is that correct?
Well, no, that's right. At OHSU Foundation at the School of Medicine, my fundraising goal each year there, and by the time we got going, we had a fundraising goal of 33 million. And every year that would increase a little bit, but we did achieve that. And the way that I would say that works, I think you can all think about it yourselves when you've thought of being involved in something. You want to find out, what is the project we're going to fund? What is the strategic plan and background, and what are the chances this is going to come to fruition? And then keep people informed along the way and complete the project where it's building, whether it's building a building, finalizing fundraising for a scholarship, or funding research. And it's important to envision a project, get people involved, and show them how you can accomplish it, and then report back. They're not going to give again if they don't see how it worked out.
Good point. You know, your nonprofit work raising millions of dollars, as you just said, with the Oregon Zoo Foundation. That's giving you, I would say, the opportunity to really develop your fundraising skills, as well as working with the public and private sectors. So how would you say that these skills would benefit you as mayor?
Well, I think the city of Wilsonville has had some success in the past and has potential for future success in public-private partnerships, looking for funding opportunities. One of the descriptors I've heard of that in the city of Wilsonville is looking ahead, you know, coming together with the citizens, planning for a project. I'll use one example, which is the would be the SMART transportation program, for example. The city council for many years has been a proponent of efficient fuel usage and looking toward getting buses that are easy on our environment. And so that was set as a goal, and then that empowers the staff to begin looking for funding for that goal, which has been backed up and set as a vision by the city council. So they've been very successful with that. In other projects, Basalt Creek and Coffee Creek, for example, that is now coming to fruition. People are beginning to occupy that and look at that for our employment lands. Well, before you can think about building and developing such a big development, you need to understand how you're going to finance the infrastructure of that project. And that's, that's another public-private partnership. Put it before the city, find out different ways we can get some of the funding ahead of time so that the project is ready to go with some infrastructure behind it. So I think there's a lot of collaboration necessary and collaborative skills between all of the council working as a team and working with the city staff, who are certainly expert in carrying out the goals of the council.
Great. Yeah, you brought up several really good points there, I have to say. We're very fortunate, I think, as a city to have our smart transportation. And I think they've done a wonderful job of ensuring that people in Wilsonville have access to transportation. And as we know, that transportation, which I believe is funded by a number of our businesses, or some of it, works well. I mean, I know in my neighborhood here, there's a lady that lives down the street who uses SMART regularly and raves about it. So
Well,
go ahead.
Well, excuse me, I did want to add something to that as you bring up the smart transportation system. And that is that a lot of people don't realize that this is such a unique system that was started years ago in Wilsonville. And yes, the businesses do pay an employment tax to make that possible. And the great thing about SMART is that if we did not have it, we would be compelled to work to have TriMet fill that position of the mass transit provider, and the rate the businesses would pay would be even higher. So I am very enthusiastic about our mass transportation assets that we have here. Until we were working remotely, I was riding West on a regular basis and Max. And Aaron, I wanted to stop for a minute and welcome Councilor Kristen Ockerval, who I see here, and I believe Councilor Joanne Linville is on the call as well. So I wanted to thank them for joining the call as well.
Great. Welcome to both of you.
While we're having this pause, could we check the lobby again, just in case more participants?
Thank you.
So are we good?
You're good.
Okay.
Thank you.
So thank you for sharing that. I, for one, believe that, and I'm sure those on the call would also feel the same, that we are very fortunate to have SMART. And, I don't know of any other city that I've lived in certainly didn't have a transportation system like that was free. So, all right, so let's move ahead here to an area that is common. And it's common, I say, not because of it's good, but because we've all experienced this. And certainly our neighboring cities who use I-5 have as well. And I'm talking about the traffic congestion in Wilsonville. So what is your plan, Julie, to address this issue?
Thank you for asking that, Aaron. And that was one of the questions that we saw on Facebook. And Aaron and another volunteer, Brian, who's been working with us, has gathered up some of these questions. And not surprisingly, that was one of them. And I wanted to recognize Representative Courtney Neron, who's on the call, because she was very involved in helping all of us with part of the traffic congestion that we all see periodically, and that is our I-5 congestion. I just wanted to thank you, Representative Neron, for working with the city and your colleagues to get some funding. Do you want to say a couple words about that? You'd have to unmute yourself.
Oh, sure. Yeah, so as representative, I asked each of my cities what their top priorities are and advocated for those in the legislature for funding or for policy. And as far as the traffic in Wilsonville, it comes up a lot. A lot of us are really aware of it. We know that Wilsonville straddles I-5 and has done its best to try to maintain, functioning traffic flow, but there are obvious challenges, and the daily gridlock or the daily bottleneck at the Boone Bridge is one of the top priorities that Wilsonville identified to work on. In addition, the 205 is also a top priority for the city. But what I did is I went to the legislature and advocated for funding to get us closer to the seismic upgrades that are needed and the auxiliary lane that's needed to get all of those southbound on-ramp lanes, or the three lights, the southbound on-ramp lanes to merge onto I-5 more smoothly. What we need is just a slight widening of the current bridge span, and then we'll be able to add an auxiliary lane that would exit at that North Canby exit that is just on the other side of the river. So we know that Elligson is a slowdown point, and I-5 is the slowdown point, and we can pinpoint what needs to be fixed. So I began the work of advocating for that. The goal is to get the project shovel ready at the state level and then request federal funding to do the actual larger project. So we did get some funding granted to take it to the next step, but there are many steps to go before it is to that shovel ready, federal investment ready level. So I'll keep advocating for it, but partnering with the city of Wilsonville has been great. And so I look forward to continuing to work on that and continuing to work on Wilsonville's top priorities with leadership here. So thanks for having me.
Thank you, Representative Neron. And so that shows you these are long-term projects. And I've also heard people say that we've talked about this at the council, that the way that our on-ramps and off-ramps are positioned today probably isn't the way you would do it going forward, but we have them there and we're trying to work with them. So then moving on to the our roads and streets within Wilsonville, that is something that is very important to all of us. And I had recently had a meeting with the city manager to just do a little more refresher on how we manage our traffic, because we did talk about that quite a bit at the council and when I was on council, and I know they do today. And the city of Wilsonville does have a fairly unique system and policy on how they plan new roads when they're building something new, and they call it a congruence methodology, which is to use all the resources they can to evaluate what is going to be required for the new, if it's going to be a new shopping mall, a shopping area, a new development, or a new road. What are all the resources that are needed to get in and out of that area? Do we have the funding, signals, all the way through to change lanes? And so the goal is to have all of that planned out before you build anything. And then there's also a traffic load rating system that they use to measure the traffic. And yes, it sometimes gets to a pinch point. And then as I'm sure that Councillor Ackerval, Councillor Linville, Councillor Lehan will all tell you, they talk about those things on a regular basis. So it's an area of constant management. And, as we think about other things that I feel are really important, that is our our bus system, making sure that's available to people, and ensuring that our pedestrian access is managed. And there's always more work to be done in that area, but I think I want you to know that I'm continually looking at making sure that our roads and streets are pedestrian friendly as we plan them. And that brings me to one other point about traffic, a little bit relative to what Representative Neron was talking about. We have all of these cities near us, north and south on I-5 and even off the freeways, that have their own traffic challenges brought about by the fact that everybody wants to live in the Northwest. And as Councillor Lehan and I have discussed many times going back over the years, there are things that come up and come along the way that where changes such as the Newburgh bypass are proposed, which would bring even more traffic to Wilsonville. So I think the mayor and council needs to be really on top of those things, staying in contact with our regional or nearby cities, and attend the regional committees that we have with our other cities so we can anticipate those things. And the city was able to really have some good input on the Newburgh bypass, which saved us some additional traffic. So it's just a constant job. And, you know, we've heard about some development potential just south of the river as well. And every time an idea is brought up to do a lot more building or expansion, such as potential big project at the Aurora Airport, I think it's important for the city of Wilsonville to look at that and evaluate what is that going to do to our traffic. And I think it's imperative that we pay attention to those things instead of just waiting to see what happens and then trying to respond to it.
Wow, you said a lot. And it's really good to hear you provide that detail. As we all know and have experienced, you know, the traffic situation on I-5 is, I mean, it's exasperating. But it's good to hear you say and really provide some really good detail, Julie, on your thoughts in that arena. And certainly we all appreciate that. Okay, so you spent some time, as you had stated earlier, as a city councilor. So during your 4-year stint on as a city councilor, what was your biggest accomplishments that you would say you had a hand in during your tenure?
Well, thank you. Well, we did a lot of different things during those years. One of the things that I was really proud of helping to start, and I will say it was also a team effort, was the Citizens Academy. And some people on this call have taken part in that. And this is just a wonderful program. So that keeps getting better and better. I love that. We also spent a lot of time on developing what can be described as employment lands in the Basalt Creek and Coffee Creek areas. And that was, we spent a lot of time with our planners, learning about the terrain over there, and also understanding the long-term land use planning that had been envisioned by Metro and others, looking at where are the best places to develop employment that would have family wage jobs. So those areas were geographically suited for that, and also the terrain and the location and proximity to roads and freeways. And so that is now coming into use, and there are some businesses occupying it and people are looking at it. So that's really an exciting one. And another area that we spent a lot of time on, that was kind of bringing Villebois into its big development phase after the recession. I know I moved here in 2007, and it was a big scramble to get a house because everybody wanted to move here and they were selling like hotcakes. And then about 5 minutes after we bought our house, everything stopped. And the city and our partners, we had a lot of investment in this area, and it was important to find a way to get it going. And I'm just really impressed and glad that we were able to come out of that era. And then Aaron, another project that was first and foremost during that time was the planning of Frog Pond West. And so that is underway, and we'll be hearing more about that in the next couple of years as we also see how the remaining two areas of Frog Pond development come into play. And a lot has changed since then because of some state legislation that is telling us that we're going to have more middle housing in developments as they go. And I am really enthused about that.
Yeah, you know, you've touched on a couple of things. First of all, the Citizens Academy. I'm proud to say I was in the second class or cohort there. Learned a lot, of course, about city government and what's going on. So thank you for your work and the rest of the city council on that. I was on the development review board and saw a lot of development, of course, in Villebois during my tenure on Development Review Board B. And then just as I was rolling off, the Frog Pond West development was just coming into being. One of the things that I'm looking forward to is, of course, this affordable housing that my role on the Planning Commission, as I think everybody on this call knows, that the Planning Commission had just given our we gave our thoughts concerning that to the City Council, and they, of course, I shouldn't say of course, they accepted that. So we were happy with that. So as this development goes forward, I mean, this is going to be a major part of your being mayor that you know, you will have a part in. So thank you for that.
Well, and there's going to be a lot more work to be done. The equitable housing strategic plan that was unanimously passed by this current council laid out several different mechanisms to make this idea of including equitable housing in our plans going forward. We have several ideas that are possible. And it's going to be important to really work diligently to pencil that out and find the mechanisms that work the best. But I think it's really exciting, and I am really enthusiastic about finding ways for more citizens in our city to get a step into home ownership. And with the price of land as it is, as it seems to be continuing to go up, I think it's going to do everyone a lot of good to be able to open that door to more people.
Yeah, you know, that's probably one of the main topics that I had discussed with individuals on my staff when I was at Xerox. And they would tell me, hey, I've got to move out of the city because I don't have or can't find affordable housing. So that, as you say, it is going to be a major, major need. And, you know, there's a couple other things that tie into that, which I'll mention here in just a minute. But I want to talk a little bit now about your platform and what you have on your website, juliefitzgeraldformayor.com. And you've got four what I call planks. You have equity and inclusion. You have, let's see, balanced growth, transportation, and then economic vitality. So you've already talked a little bit about traffic, a lot about that, as we know. So maybe on a future town hall, you can discuss these four planks in more in detail. But what I'd like to do, and I'm curious about two of these. Can you share just a little bit about what you mean by balanced growth? And then I want you to share, if you would, with us your vision for equity and inclusion.
Well, thank you. And I don't want to go into too much detail here. I think we covered some of it. When we talk about balanced growth, let's just make a footnote that managing traffic as we grow is a big part of it. So we won't go into that again, but we need to continue to evaluate how we're going to manage the flow of traffic in our city as we grow. Because we know that there's a huge influx of population to the Northwest projected especially by the Portland State University Center for Population Research. And then we just all see that on a yearly basis. As we look at where growth where we would have more houses, more development, we know that Frog Pond is a planned area for growth, and we know that Basalt Creek and Coffee Creek are already planned areas for jobs. And a number of you have been involved in the town center master plan process, and also some of these other citizen involvement areas, such as the Parks Master Plan. Well, what's important to me as all of these things roll forward is that we continue to pay attention to preserving our natural resources. I'm really proud of how Wilsonville has built in some great structures in its infrastructure to make sure that our stormwater is handled in a responsible way so that we're not overly, we're not having excess erosion, a lot of runoff and so forth, and that we have space for trees, wildlife, birds, and bees, of course. Wilsonville has been a tree city for well over 20 years, and now it's a bee city, and those are things to be really, really proud of. Representative Neron is clapping. It is really great, and so as mayor, I would certainly want to make sure that we maintain those things. And another part of balanced growth really crosses over into equity and inclusion. Maybe I'll just step into that, because as we grow, I think it's important to make sure that we have a variety of housing options, and we make sure that all of our neighborhoods are connected with trails. That's been a theme here for many years, and I'm very committed to continuing that. Our neighborhoods should have access to playgrounds within a decent proximity of the neighborhood. And Erin, you and I have talked about, under the heading of equity and inclusion, we've talked about how, it's not a fast fix by any means. I don't think there's any one thing that anybody could do to turn the switch on and say, oh, we've arrived, we're just doing a fantastic job. I think it's a matter of looking at our policies and procedures and determining where we might have some structural barriers to inclusion, what could be changed. The cultural asset, I mean, there's a lot of great stuff going on at the city right now that I'm really impressed with. We've talked about also, under the equity and inclusion heading, our police services, our police force. Are we managing that in the best way possible? There is currently a citizen named Cassandra Edwards and her husband Jay, and you know them, Erin, and they have started some conversations with the council and the city manager, which are really impressive, about perhaps developing a citizen police advisory council that would find a way to look at the way our police services, I'm just going to call them that instead of a force maybe, how are they being managed? How should they best be evaluated? And when you're on the city council, I know from experience that you do get a report from the Clackamas County Sheriff that serves as our police department, and they do come periodically and give reports, and they're responsive whenever asked. But I think I'm interested in finding ways to develop a guide or system that would be available to anybody on the city council. When you've got a new person, chances are they don't have a background in evaluating that kind of service. So what are some good questions and ways to make sure we have the best public safety possible?
Okay, great. You touched on a little bit about citizen involvement. And of course, this community police advisory group, of course, would be coming from the public. But there's one other area under your equity and inclusion plank, and that's affordable broadband.
Mm-hmm.
As you know, and others on this call, Representative Nuran, I've had conversations with her on this, but affordable broadband, this means a lot to me. This is especially important for kids, you know, K through 12, because they need access to affordable high-speed broadband, and you know, it's a necessity right now. And I'm going to say it's a right in light of the COVID-19 epidemic for them to be able to connect to the school that they're going to. But it's not just them. It also applies to businesses, especially small businesses. And as a business grows and they engage with more customers, and they have larger amounts of data that are stored in the cloud, high-speed broadband becomes a necessity for them as well. So I thank you, Representative Courtney Nuran, for your support in this arena. I know you realize the importance of this. So Julie, what are your thoughts about bringing affordable high-speed broadband coverage here to Wilsonville?
Well, I am really interested in that, and we did discuss that and made a start at it several years ago in a core area of Wilsonville. But we discussed, there are a couple of cities in Oregon who have made that a priority to make that available to everyone in their city. And I think it's an excellent example of ways to make sure that all of our students have access to excellent broadband, especially now. I think it's also important as we look at wanting to have a vibrant business community, making sure that if we have excellent broadband, 5G available, I think that will help us in recruiting businesses as well, especially family wage businesses that have some more sophisticated needs for data management.
Yeah, you know, that's, as you heard me say, that's a requirement, and it's not a nice to have, it's a need. And not only that, but that would make Wilsonville extremely attractive to have that, and for potential not only businesses but people wanting to move to the city to know that when I move in, even though I'm in a lower income or I should say affordable housing area, that I'll have access to that. So that's good. Well, I think I've come to the end of the questions that I had that we'd gotten off of the site. So do we have any questions from the attendees here or in the chat area?
The chat is now turned on. Yes, Susan.
Susan, would you like to?
Unmute, there we go.
Okay.
First, I want to apologize for moving around so much.
Oh, wait.
Okay, is it okay?
We can hear you.
Anyway, I want to apologize for moving around so much. We're just adapting to this house, and it has a loft and it's open. And all of a sudden I realized that my husband's going to have to get headphones for the TV. Okay, because it's
We can't hear you. There you go, Susan.
Yeah.
something keeps muting. It keeps saying the host muted.
It does.
I
good,
am
Susan.
sorry. We're trying to unmute all of the, I think, I'm sorry that kept turning off.
Anyway,
Okay.
our broadband cut me off, and I disappeared during this and had to wait to be let in again. So yeah, that was a good point. But what I want to really ask about is, you talked about traffic and I-5 and solutions. And so as you were talking, my mind was thinking, okay, got to have 405, not I-5, 405. No, it's the I-5. Sorry, I was from the LA area. Okay. You got to have 5. And of course, that's a throughway, but there's this balance between more roads and more lanes and more cars. And when it doesn't work anymore, because you just can't keep having more cars. And so what balance, it's just somewhere to think about a balance in that, about how that all works.
I know, I agree with you. And there is not an infinite number of cars, I suppose, that you could fit in the Northwest. Eventually you would have the whole place be freeways. So I think that's what's exciting about developing our pedestrian access. Having better broadband also helps with more home-based businesses with perhaps less commuting. We have a lot of people who drive their kids to school instead of having them ride the bus or walk. And I think that as we improve a lot of those elements and maybe attract people to the city who want to use their car a little bit less, it will help. I think it does depend on personal preference.
We could ask Elon Musk to come up and put his tunnels, his pneumatic tube tunnels, which he's putting in LA.
Right, yes.
I mean, that would be pretty cool, but anyway.
Well, I think that developing, having another thing that's important for traffic is maintaining, we mentioned this maybe a little bit earlier, but really maintaining good relationships with the mayors and leadership in our neighboring cities so that we can anticipate where the pinch points are and perhaps work together with our state representatives and looking to federal resources to manage the traffic needs.
Great. So do we have any other questions in the chat area?
I do have a question from Cornelia Gibson. She says, along with pedestrian access, how about additional bike paths? Yes, I don't know why I didn't say bikes. I love bike riding. I was only mentioning pedestrian. But yes, we really do need more bike paths, Cornelia. That's great. And you've probably, I imagine everybody on the call has been looking at some of the open houses and attending the sessions to learn about options for the pedestrian bridge over I-5. And that, I think, is really an exciting vision for Wilsonville. Kids will be more apt to ride their bikes across the freeway, adults too. Any age person has some trepidation with walking across that I-5 exchange where the Fred Meyer is. And the more bike paths that we can have that are safe and appealing, the more usage I think we're going to get.
Great. Okay.
I forgot to say, I think one thing that's happening now with COVID is we're seeing different traffic patterns in cities and different uses of streets, which is something I'd like to think that we would think about.
Good point. Something to manage and use our traffic rating systems. Perhaps the historic patterns are going to change now that more people are at home.
Exactly. Yeah. So thank you for that question there, Cornelia. Do we have others that, we have a few more minutes here, so do we have others that have questions they'd like to present to Julie? No?
I'll ask a question.
Okay.
Thanks. So I came in late, I apologize, but did you talk at all about our parks and recreation system and the master plans that are happening for the parks?
I just mentioned it briefly, but we really didn't get into that. So one other thing that reminds me, former Councilor Stevens, is that when I was on the council, we began the process of acquiring some land along the Willamette River. And the city did acquire that, and it's a really exciting thing because we really haven't had much to work with in developing that riverfront for recreation access. And so now that is part of the land holdings of the city, and it has been included in the Visionary Parks Master Plan. And we don't have all the money in front of us right now to fulfill that entire plan, but it's a matter of looking for it and finding it and keeping on deck for looking for those resources and planning ahead so that we can be shovel ready when the resources come about. And right now, I think there is development moving ahead on a trail along Boone's Ferry Park there. So lots of exciting things are happening and could happen in the future.
Thank you.
Okay, excellent. So,
Oh, I see one more question here. Mary Pettinger says that her daughter is going to be voting for the first time this fall. And what would I tell an 18-year-old about myself and why she should vote? Well, I would tell her that I never planned on running for mayor when I was 18, but or being on the city council, but I think it's a great thing to do. I think a lot more people should think about getting involved in their city, their local government, one way or another. So I hope your daughter will, find some way to be involved. The first thing she might want to do is get involved in some of the surveys and planning that's happening right now, like the cultural assets survey, the bike and ped bridge planning, and just kind of get her foot. That's just one opportunity that she might want to look at. And I would hope, it's pretty exciting really to think about 18-year-olds, because that's a whole group of people who can influence our future. And I really hope they will be involved. And yeah.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
That's all I have to say. I would just hope she'll find what she likes to do to get involved first and go from there.
Yeah, I just wanted to make a comment on that survey that you were saying, the cultural asset. I believe it was Monday of last week, where they had a Zoom meeting just for kids. And it was interesting, the feedback that they provided. So, your daughter getting involved, certainly we need a lot more young people to get involved, because they're the ones, of course, that are going to take us forward into the next decades. So it's good to hear that an 18-year-old is interested in why she should vote for Julie. I think that's good. So Julie, do we have any other questions that have come in?
Oh, I do have one more from Elaine Swite. And before I answer that, I wanted to say thank you everybody for participating in this first call. And I already learned one thing to do differently next time. Do not check enable waiting room. So heard that.
Yeah.
And so Elaine has asked, what do I think, wait just a minute, just jumped. What do I think will be my greatest challenge as mayor in this next 4 years? I think it will be, the reason I came up with these 4 things, I guess it does represent a lot of the things that I see as the biggest challenge, and I'll just name them off really fast. Equity and inclusion, we already talked about that. And I just believe that is not a quick fix, but I'm really committed to listening for and finding ways that we can improve in that area. And I'm really, I don't consider that to be a huge challenge. I think that's a great challenge, and it just needs to be front and center. And then balanced growth we talked about. I think that's going to be an important and a big challenge in the next 4 years. And it involves transportation. Everybody wants good traffic management, and Susan Reap, if you can find some ways to get people to drive less, that would be great. We'll try and come up with some ideas there. And then economic vitality is also a challenge. I mean, gosh, COVID-19 global pandemic has some things in store for us that we don't really know about yet. And so as a city, as a mayor, I would do, I really want to be involved in managing and decreasing the spread so that we can shut that down. Our city certainly has a role in that. We need to team up with our neighbors and encourage all of ourselves and each other to manage that as best we can. And then there are some, there's going to be some significant economic fallout from this to individuals, to small business and big business. And the city of Wilsonville, or a city our size, really does not have the resources to address that in a significant way. I think we're going to need to advocate with our leaders like Representative Courtney Neron. I'm not putting all the pressure on you, but we need to reach out to our partners. We need to work with our federal resources and advocate for our city and our state. So I think that kind of sums it up as what I see as the biggest challenges. And then I had a note that Councillor Linville wanted to make a statement.
Great.
Thank you, Julie. I wanted to thank you for taking the time to do this town hall. And I just really wanted to publicly give you my support. And I also wanted to just make the comment that from my time on the city council, I think one of the mayor's big roles is to really communicate and be a colleague with not only the councilors, but with the members of the extended community in the state and in our local region. And I know that you have in your work, especially in your role doing fundraising, you can't be successful in that job without having those kinds of skills to be able to establish those relationships, to be a colleague, and to do it in a way that will, I think, engender respect for our city and for the mayor's position. And so I just wanted to publicly applaud you in your candidacy and wish you the very best.
Well, thank you, Councillor Linville. And I want to say two more things. I want to say that Councillor Linville and Councillor Ockervall on this call are both running for city council. So maybe they will have a town hall soon, and you can benefit from my experience, and you can exclude the waiting room. So thank you very much for that. And Aaron, I have one quick question that I think is a really great one from Jeff. And I have a fast answer. He says, if with the benefit of hindsight, you could have one do-over decision from your time on city council, what would it be? Boy, I'm so glad you asked that. It would be to allow more options for smaller and mid-size affordable lots in Frog Pond West. That is it. So thank you very much.
Julie, does it take money to run for mayor?
Yes, it does.
So where would one make a contribution?
Thank you, Susan. We have a website at juliefitzgeraldformayor.com. And if any of you would like to make a contribution, $25, $50, $100 or more, that would be wonderful. We just mailed out a postcard today to, your budget allows you to mail out so many. So I think we mailed about 5,000. I hope you all get it. If you don't, let me know and we'll send you some. We also would like to, we have printed a bunch of extras, and I would be glad to get you some postcards to share with your friends if you would like. And I would like to ask for all of your support. This is a big job. Susie Stevens is my campaign manager, which I really appreciate, and she's helping to give people some tips on sharing the news through email and a few other things, lawn signs. So thank you, Susan, for that great question.
Great.
Welcome.
Well, we've got just 1 minute left, and can you just wrap it up and take us home, Julie?
Yes, I'm going to say thank you very much, everybody, for spending this hour with me and helping us with our first town hall. And I hope you all have a wonderful evening.
Thank you. And I want to say thank you to everyone for attending as well. We hope you've enjoyed this town hall this evening, and stay safe and have a good rest of your evening.
Thank
you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.